All right, good afternoon, viewers. If you're signing in to see this video, you're curious about how GAME is going to be taking forward the journey of mass entrepreneurship across the country. One of the things that we're very sure about at GAME is that we can't do this alone. We definitely want to bring in people from all over the world. There is the global, of course, in the Global Alliance for Mass Entrepreneurship, in the name itself. One of our earliest partners in the journey on entrepreneurial mindsets is Aflatoun. And today we've got Roeland with us to share a little bit about their own journey so that you, the viewer, could also understand why we're so keen and why we're so excited about this partnership building out over the next couple of years. So Roeland, first question to you. How did the journey of Aflatoun begin? And we know that there's an interesting backstory about the Indian roots for the organization, and we can see that you all are coming in deeper to where your roots are. So we'd love to hear that first.
Thank you, Shiv, and it's great to be with you today. Yes, Aflatoun originates from India, to be honest. It's founded in Mumbai, and the founder is a lady from Mumbai, Jeru Bilimoria. She's a social entrepreneur. And during the 90s, she worked for the Tata Institute of Social Studies, and she was very much engaged in vulnerability of children and young people. And one of the activities she started was the setting up Childline India. And in all the calls which the growing call centers in India were receiving were all related to basically two issues: violation of child rights and issues related to poverty. And she realized that there were a lot of different sectoral responses to these issues, but a more comprehensive approach towards addressing violation of rights and addressing poverty issues. She developed a concept which at the time was called social and financial education for children. And it's a combination of social life skills, but on the other side also financial skills. And I'll get a bit more in detail in a minute, but basically, she set it up in Mumbai. She developed the concept there, and as it became successful and had a real impact on the lives of the children and youth who participated, after a few years, when she set not only up Childline India but set up Child Helpline International, once she had established that, she realized that she also felt that she needed to set up the concept of social and financial education beyond India. And as we speak today, Aflatoun, we have programs and there are organizations in more than 100 countries who are using the concept to empower children with social, financial, and entrepreneurship skills.
Excellent to hear that from you, Roeland, so far. Just a quick input for the viewers. You all start as early as little ones. You've got an Aflatoun program, and you go all the way up. So could you share a little bit about the audiences that you all typically engage with across the world? And also, what do you think is the right age to be starting on this journey of 21st century skills or entrepreneurial mindsets?
A very important point, Shiv. First of all, when it was developed in India, it was at primary school age, and that's the age when most children, or all children nearly, are still in school. So from the timing-wise, primary school age is the right age. But at the same time, when you look at the immediate needs, it's the adolescents and young people who are transitioning from school to work life. And they really need to have that booster in entrepreneurial mindset, in financial skills. So after the program initially started at primary school age, tools and education material were developed for secondary school age and children who have already phased out of school. But at the same time, more and more research has been showing that you can't start early enough. And therefore, we indeed have a preschool education package called Aflatoun. Of course, the content is quite different when you talk about senior secondary school and you talk about preschool. But the concepts of social skills and financial skills, entrepreneurial skills are still integrated in those tools. Now, in order to reach as many children as possible, we have set up a tool set which can be used by all types of organizations, NGOs, governments, cooperatives, microfinance institutions, and we share these tools with them widely through a social franchise model. and therefore we have all likes working with us in all these different countries. But the one thing they have in common is the recognition and the need to empower children and young people with these essential skills.
Appreciate that response, Roeland. So Roeland, coming back to a little bit more of the specifics in India, of course, we're excited to see Aflatoun having brought in our first people in Andhra Pradesh. And we have some of them contributing to us from Visakhapatnam and different areas. And we also see that your funders have backed that project for a time span of about 3 to 5 years, and that's where the conversation currently is. So my question to you, what are your hopes as Aflatoun for the work that we've started in Andhra Pradesh? And what is it that the funders are dreaming that we'll achieve together over there too?
Okay. Yeah, I think, to be honest, looking at India today, also looking at that, COVID has shown us all, it was in a certain extent also a wake-up call that while people were thinking, well, children and young people, resiliency, learning about finance, learning about entrepreneurial mindset, you learn that from your parents. But if one thing you don't learn that in school, it's something you do from the household. But if one thing we have seen, and we already knew, of course, is that most parents don't have the financial skills and the entrepreneurship skills themselves. And as a result of that, many of them live in poverty, and their children are suffering at the same time. So working at the moment, that is growing realization in India that the government, the education system, the private sector have a role and a responsibility as well to empower the next generation with these important entrepreneurship skills. We see that at the moment the climate is right in India. There are huge opportunities, and as Aflatoun, we are keen to work with all partners in India, and we are talking here in sense of departments of education, the central banks, the private sector, of course, leading agencies like GAME, to work together to develop that entrepreneurial mindset. Because we know if you engage in the community with all these actors, actually children and youth, it's not something entrepreneurial mindset is not something you get from birth. You can develop that and you can nourish that. And we see that at the moment the timing is right in India to work with these stakeholders to have that vision of developing it further.
So, Roeland, a follow-on question on your last statement. When you say that the mindset can get developed at a later stage, are there some learnings that you have from the work that you've done in other countries that we could adopt in the work that we're doing in India? So that's the first part of it. And reference to that last question that you had, is there something that Aflatoun could share with us? And I know this is something that's striking me as you're speaking. What if you have children who have different starting points? So there are people who are supposed to be at a grade 10 level, but they're not. They've reached a later age. So my question to you has got two parts. The first one is, any learnings that you could share with us from the hundreds of countries that you work with that we would like to adopt over here? And as a follow-on to the last statement that you just made, which is that you can nurture it. So my question to you is, how do you nurture it when the class has got different levels, or when the audience has got different levels as per what their age is like? So I'd love to hear your thoughts on that one.
Thank you for those two important questions. Looking at the experience around the world, we recently we've developed quite a few, but maybe the best one for India to have a look at is the experience in Jordan, in the Middle East, where basically there is education has developed over the last few decades enormously, and most young people graduate from high schools. Many go to universities. And the education system really improved, but these young people come out of school with degrees and diplomas, but without they are unsuccessful in finding jobs. And there, the government really realized that what was being taught in school and what these young people need to be successful as they transition to work life is that they lack the entrepreneurial mindset and the financial skills. And there, interestingly enough, the central bank and the Ministry of Education came together. As you know, of course, the Ministry of the Minister of Education is responsible for teaching children skills, but the central bank also has the responsibility to ensure financial inclusion and ensure that the population understands finance. And together with an Aflatoun partner on the ground in Jazz, they started a working group on financial education, entrepreneurship education. And the central bank brought in the private sector. And basically, the government at the highest level said, we need to make sure that every child, young person coming out of school has those essential financial and entrepreneurship skills. And they decided to make it a compulsory subject in the curricula. And of course, that would require an enormous investment in the education system. But coming together and mobilizing the private sector, the private sector set up a CSR fund, and 1% of their profit went into that fund to invest and develop the whole program. And what we have done over the last 4 or 5 years, it's now being rolled out, is that at Aflatoun, we developed together with the local partner a pilot. We tested it, and then the Ministry of Education came in from their technical level, the central bank and the private sector. And now it's being rolled out in all schools from grade 5 to grade 12. And it's a compulsory subject, and all children who are still in school in Jordan do exams in financial education. And specifically looking at the dynamics between government, NGO sector, as well as the private sector is a nice example, which is worth a case study, and it has been written up, and I encourage everyone to have a look at it.
So Roeland, when you built a model like that and you were in the center of it, so there's a private sector organization, there's an NGO which is there, and we are attempting that for the first time as well, but we'd love to learn from that perspective, and hopefully the viewers will get that as well, which is that, how does it work? Does everyone get paid in that model? Do the NGO partners also get paid? Does the private sector get paid? Or has everyone come together and set aside time for it separately? So my question is, if the private sectors come in, was it a financial model which was leveraged over there? Did they get paid for their time, or did the funders come in and pay both sides? Like, how did it work in particular in Jordan?
First, most important is the ownership, that everybody is committed to the process, of course. In the model in Jordan, for example, as Aflatoun, we were the international technical partner, and we provided limited resources for our technical assistance. However, at the same time, the private sector set up a fund, or the central bank set up a sort of CSR fund, and the profits of the private sector were 1% of the profit was channeled into that fund. And that's really important, because it's quite an investment, because when you talk about rolling out financial education as a compulsory subject, it basically means you're talking about building the capacity of all the teachers in the country. And that is by far the most costly activity. But by having it integrated into the national education system, of course, you have your systems in place. You have your teacher training institutes, which are already being financed through the government budget, etc. So by chopping it up in smaller pieces, you can clearly see who is funding for what. And with commitment from everyone, it is possible. Of course, every country is different. And most important, it has to be locally owned. As Aflatoun, we came in as a technical partner, but it's really the government and the local civil society partners need to take the lead in this process.
Okay. So Roeland, question for you. I know Aflatoun has been working in India for some time. What are the challenges you faced in imparting the curriculum over here in our country?
It's the same challenge we see when we start in any country, and that is people see entrepreneurship education, financial education as a nice to have. It's not a core priority. It's not in the curriculum. And you know, curriculum departments, they have done their thing for many years in the same way, and the world is changing very rapidly. And having that process and engagement with all the stakeholders to really engage with them to see maybe it's not the parents anymore who need to teach financial education, but it's the responsibility of the education system to learn these essential skills. That process is a steep uphill battle. We see that in every country, But at the same time, there is a very fast growing recognition. And in order to move on that process, on that challenge, you need to bring all stakeholders together. That's again, you really, and your local knowledge leaders, your local advocates have to be in the driving seat. And us as Aflatoun, we come in with our evidence, with our technical expertise, but it has to be done again, as mentioned before, by local stakeholders.
So the model to address these challenges then, from what I'm understanding, one would be bring in multiple players, which is bring in members from civil society, members from community, members from, like you mentioned over there, the central bank, education folks, parents, and so on. So that was one.
And private sector.
Yeah, and the private sector. And so can you just articulate that the model to address these challenges that we should aspire for over here? Like just all the pieces. Have I missed anything in what I just recounted for you, or that would cover it? And technical inputs coming in from people from outside, like Aflatoun. Would that be the right way to look at it?
Yeah, that's the right mix.
Okay. So my next question to you is, from everywhere that you work, I mean, one is, of course, the measurement and evaluation will give us the numbers, but is there a qualitative success story or a quantitative success story that you could share with us, which will hearten us as we attempt to do this very difficult task?
Yes, it's we as Aflatoun, we've done over 100 studies and a growing number of randomized controlled trials building the evidence. But we have individual success stories of an individual child, which we know has gone through the program implemented by an NGO, and you see that they have really developed their entrepreneurial mindset and are now leading their own small companies in communities which are characterized as poor, and they are basically setting up businesses, and they are hiring other people in their community, are also finding jobs as a result of the entrepreneurial mindset of the leaders in their community. So. And we have examples from across the world. If you talk about the cocoa sector, which is a very poor sector in West Africa, we suddenly see young entrepreneurs who decide not to move to the urban areas, but they start a profitable business in their rural communities and are successful and are recruiting other youth in their community. But we also see it at scale in the numbers of children which are increasing in saving behavior, in amounts they are saving. We also see those children which go through the program are more likely to stay in school. We sometimes get criticized that, well, aren't you not making them business people, men and women who want to leave school and start a business, and isn't there a negative impact on these children? No, the program and the tools which we develop should be in a way that children are encouraged and see the vision to stay longer in school in order to be more successful as they grow up. And maybe another nice example is in the Philippines, where we work with the local cooperative movement. There are about 500 cooperatives who are working with the local schools and building the capacity of the schools. And there, within 3 years' time, more than 1 million children are saving in those communities through those 500 cooperatives. Because they went through the program and they see the benefits, and they're making not only they're not themselves financially profitable, but they're also really engaged in their community, and they're making community plans, how to improve the situation not only of themselves but their families and the more vulnerable in their society.
Those are very heartening stories to hear. Game, of course, dreams of the time when we can create those 50 million jobs and 10 million entrepreneurs. And Roeland, every time I speak to you, I get a little more ammunition on my own learning journey. This input that you shared, that there is data that you all have, which backs the fact that kids will stay in school by going through this program. That's something that I want you to share with us as we go out meeting different states and possibly hear the same worries coming forward from that side. All right, so here's a question for you. When we talk about the success, we always tell the kids to think about failure too. Is there a glorious failed experiment? Something that you all did and it started with a lot of fanfare, you really thought about it. And what did you all learn with it? And that's the same approach we want to take to our kids, that, you're going to start up maybe something and there are going to be failures on the way. How you deal with those are going to be the measure of you as a man or a woman. So is there something that you could share with us, that failures that actually taught you something which you then brought into other countries and places that you work in?
Yeah, it's quality assurance. From us as Aflatoun, of course, we have the vision, and I think we share the vision with game. It needs to be at scale. We don't want to have small projects. We really need to reach out at large numbers. You are mentioning the 50 million yourself, and we're with you on that vision and that ambition. But when you do scale, of course, there is sometimes a risk that quality assurance lags behind. And we've had a few situations where we had very enthusiastic local partners who wanted to do too much with too little experience, and rolling out the program at a pace where the quality of teaching by the teachers was unfortunately substandard. And as a result of that, if the teaching is substandard, it also means that the quality of education the children are receiving is substandard. So we continuously in our trainings, in our building of the capacity of organizations of teachers, we hammer on finding the right balance on one side on scaling, but you need to keep a very close eye on the quality assurance. And as I mentioned, we've done over 100 studies, because you really need to continue to monitor if you are doing the right thing in that sense. But finding the right balance in the ambition and the quality is one of the, and in some cases initially we had some failures there.
So question here, which again I'm responding to your input on that. When you choose an implementation partner and assess that, okay, here's a partner who's going to carry the Aflatoun brand name to some extent over there. Any secret sauce that you could share with us? And this one is going to be shared with all the leads at GAME, because we're always looking for partners for our work. So yes, something that you can share with us, that there are 3 or 4 NGOs who you meet, and all of them say, hey, we could do this. How do you choose the one out of those 4? What are the things you look for over there, Roeland? Or the team?
Yeah, it's a very important question, and we as the recognition of the importance of entrepreneurship education, financial education is growing. And some years back, you guys in GAME and we were all alone in the desert, but now suddenly people are wanting to join the bandwagon, because they realize now that there is something really important in this issue. And it's really good to have as many stakeholders as possible. But at the same time, in order to ensure quality, you need to do some due diligence with these partners who are joining this important work. To be honest, from our side, we make it we set up some hurdles to in the journey to join the Aflatoun network. So it's not that you give us a call and you sign up and tomorrow you are one of the Aflatoun partners. We make it actually a bit of a unattractive roads to become a partner. So they need to fill in quite a number of forms and as a first step. And so the people who just think they have a lucky quick win, they will disengage themselves quickly, because there's too much work from their perspective. So in that sense, putting up some hurdles, of course, doing due diligence, and with Corona at the moment, it's a bit difficult to visit to sites and offices, but really looking into their books, into their previous achievements, reference checks, and those things. We have a whole list of things to do. We can do it quite quickly, but at the same time, we make it a bit difficult for people, so that we really get the ones who have the most commitment, because commitment, that's the most important issue.
Okay, so here's another question that I'm going to ask you. What would make 2021 a successful year for Aflatoun?
We are globally growing at a very fast pace. We have over 300 partners around the world, and we are growing, and more than 40 national governments, ministries of education, and central banks are working with us. And every month we have new governments joining. For us, to be honest, the work in India is absolute top priority. It's not only on the size of your country, of course, and the number of children and young people who urgently need these skills. But it's also the innovative partnership led by GAME. We're very keen to see how we as an international partner can work with such a strong local partners, working with the government in really integrating entrepreneurship education in a system. And if for me, a success would be that we would make major strides in Andhra Pradesh, and building on that experience, engage with other states in India to make sure that we reach at scale and quality as many as children and young people with these essential skills.
All right, Roeland, as always, it's been a very engaging conversation. I enjoy talking to you at a personal level. I'm hoping that the viewers for this will get the same benefit that I see as well. Roeland, looking forward to having this conversation again with you in the not too distant future, where we can share some of the learnings of what we're getting in Andhra Pradesh.